Okay. Wipe that down. Tap a new one in. We don't want to damage it. Oh, I have a little debris on the inside here. I'm going to make sure that's all cleaned up. Looks like it's a little bit of the paint left over from the other seal. Pretty good. Still a little bit on there, but that's probably okay. Alright, so let's try it again. What I usually like to do is use the old seal to drive the new seal in, but the old seal was obviously damaged too much. So I'll try to do this old school. When it gets cocked like that, it becomes pretty difficult. Well, that was not the smoothest in the world, but at least it went. Oh, this other thing, that gasket stayed put when I took it apart originally, so I got to take that gasket off of there. That's a little plastic, well, gasket. Just like that. Okay, so we've got the new O-ring in here. We've got the new oil seal in here. We're going to put the pump back together. There's clearances I took in here, and they all measured within spec, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. It's just a matter of getting the clearances right. You want to try to align that up as best you can. And again, I'm going to put some DC-4 around the edge of this thing. It's just a petroleum-based lubricant to lubricate the seals, lubricate the metals, so the parts just slide in together. It's like KY for an engine. Probably get lots of opinions about what lubricant to use. The manual says to use something else. I should probably point out I'm not doing what the manual said to do. Okay, so let's see. How did this go? This went in here like that, right? Let me get that seal out of there. Oh, and this is why we had to use those goofy plastic things. And then, holy cow, we are very close to being done. It's pretty exciting, actually. So, let's see. I'm hoping this only goes in one way, because I can't really remember. No. 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 Yes. Okay. Make sure we got this right. Why does that not feel right? Something just didn't feel right to me. Ah, there we go. Okay. I was just fighting for room. So put a little DC-4 on these guys. Little motor KY. Let's Just make sure they slide right in. Okay. And then we're going to go over here and assemble it. Stand by. Okay, we'll go quick. I think my daughter's waking up. Alright. Water pump. Oil pump. We have our passages here line up with passages there. And it just sits on this. Wow. Did not mean to do that. Now I'm hunting for mountings. There we go. Okay. Oh, nice and smooth. Nice and easy. All the holes are lined up. Okay. We're going to use new gaskets. These are little O-rings, Teflon O-rings. 4, 5, 6, 7, and they gave me one extra. This kit that I have is obviously for a few different varieties of these transmissions. Alright, hello, welcome back. Wanted to talk briefly about the overdrive housing. There was some confusion earlier about how it was supposed to go together. And if you recall, at one point I had a snap ring left over. Well, we resolved that issue. The problem was that when I took the thing apart, I of course laid the parts, neatly in separate piles, and then when I took this housing and all of its related parts to the transmission shop, they just kind of intermingled all the parts because they knew what they were doing. They didn't have to have them separated. They just threw the parts on the bench and said, okay, you need to replace this, 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 and this, and okay, and put all the good parts back in a box and send it back to me. So I was left to reassemble it by just the manual, not by how it actually came apart. And no fault to the transmission shop. Those guys are great guys. They know a hell of a lot more about this than I do. But in any case, that's where the confusion lies. And the manual says that this clutch right here, this is let's see, I'm going to try to get my terminology right. The clutch that's inside, that's behind that monster spring, that's in here, is called the overdrive direct clutch. And I believe this clutch on the outside is just called the overdrive clutch. There's two clutches in this assembly. One that's behind that monster spring, and one that is outside. And the ATSG manual says that there are two ways of putting this together, in referring to this clutch, and whether you have a gas or a diesel determines which way you put it together. So and the difference is that the ATSG manual says that the gas has, this snap ring has 5 sets of plates and discs, a backing plate and 2 snap rings. So this little keeper, 5 sets of plates and discs, a backup plate, a thick backup plate, and 2 snap rings for the gas version. For the diesel version, one of those snap rings down here is not there, and the backup plate is stepped. And by stepped, I mean it looks a lot like this. Instead of being one thick kind of dimension right here, it's stepped so the backing plate would sit, kind of lower, if you will, in the housing. And with the absence of one snap ring, the backup plate being sitting lower in the housing, that would make room for one more plate and one more disc, which made a lot of sense to me because it was a diesel. They have more torque, generally speaking, than gasoline engines. So that made sense to me. So in trying to put this thing back together according to the manual, it appeared that I was, if you recall, earlier on there was there appeared to be a shortage of plates, of steel plates, and I thought that maybe the steel plate was held by the transmission shop, like maybe it came out on the bench and no one really knew, and I didn't know any better. Maybe I lost it somewhere along the line. I missed a plate, so I had to go back to the transmission shop, and they just gave me one that said, here, this thing was just sitting around. So I put it in, and nothing fit. I could take out this extra snap ring, put my 6 plates and 6 discs in, and assemble it with this keeper here, and if you recall, it went together, but it was tight. I even think I mentioned, I may have even said something like interference fit on the video. It's not supposed to be that tight. You're going to burn out the clutch if it's that tight. I was going to go ahead and put it together like that. So thank goodness I took this thing apart, because that's why I had this extra snap ring. If you recall, at some point I had everything almost all together over here, and I had an extra snap ring, and I thought, damn, now I got to figure out where this snap ring goes. Well, according to the diameter of the snap ring, it could only be in this housing, so that's why I took this back off, and I started focusing on this, and that's when I realized, well, that backing plate needs to be stepped, like the manual says so. So I called the transmission shop back, and I said, I need this stepped backup plate, the backup plate for the diesel, for the outer clutch in this transmission, not the inner clutch, because the inner clutch has a stepped plate. In fact, this is the stepped plate for the inner clutch. This is the one that he actually gave me, because this is, as it turns out, the only stepped plate that is in there. Okay, so the manual says, let me reiterate, the manual says for the diesel, the backup plate is stepped. There's 1 fewer snap ring here, and you have 6 plates and 6 steels, okay, for the diesel. So I go to my transmission shop, I order this part, it's the wrong part, so now I'm confused. Nothing's going together right. I go to a Chrysler dealer, and they even made me more confused. They weren't able to tell me anything. When you want this level of detail, don't bother going to a dealer. They won't tell you. They'll make the situation worse. So they gave me a little printout, and it didn't even come close to what I think I should have in here. They said there should be only 3 plates, 3 steels, 2 backup plates, and a bunch of other stuff in there. And I'm like, no, that's not even close to what I have. So I went back to the transmission shop, thoroughly confused at this point. I just want the thing to go together. I just help me get it back together. And the original guy I went to, who helped me assemble this piece, originally, sat down with me, and we talked about what's happening here, and there is no stepped backup plate. I actually did confirm that at the Chrysler dealer. I asked him for this year truck, this transmission, the 48RE transmission for the 2007. I asked the guy to look up the backing plate for the diesel and the backing plate for the gas, and those 2 backing plates were the same part number.